unfold.
Okay, let's get into this. Today, we are diving into what is, I think, one of the most compelling epidemiological puzzles out there.
It really is.
We're looking at these specific, verifiable geographic regions that just seem to defy, the standard, often painful trajectory of how we age in the modern world.
Right.
This is our deep dive into the blue zones.
And it's so much more than just a curiosity. I mean, for researchers, this is a demographic goldmine. These aren't just places where people are living to, say, 85 instead of 80.
No, it's a completely different quality of life. The investigators found this profound anomaly, and they gave it a name that I think is so powerful: the radical compression of morbidity.
That phrase is everything. It's the whole ball game.
Lay that out for us. What does that actually look like in practice, a compressed morbidity?
Well, think about a typical life in, an industrialized country. We often spend the last 10, maybe even 15 years of life plagued by these chronic debilitating diseases.
Sure, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, dementia, severe arthritis.
Exactly. That state of being diseased, that morbidity, it's prolonged. It's expensive, both financially and emotionally.
Okay.
In the blue zones, what we see is that those same conditions are significantly delayed. They're often compressed into just the last few weeks, maybe even the last few months of life.
So people are functional, they're vibrant, they're active, well into their 90s and beyond.
Way beyond.
Yeah.
And then there's a sudden, relatively quick decline. It's the highest possible quality of life, right up until the very end.
So our mission today, it's not just to, list off a bunch of foods or recommend some supplements.
Yeah.
Based on the really exhaustive anthropological work in our source material, we need to analyze the whole system, the synergy between culture, topography, social norms, the whole architecture of these places.
Yeah.
We're looking for the operating system that governs these communities.
The goal here is really to deconstruct that cultural scaffolding. What is it that allows these communities to be so successful at living well for so long? We want to isolate that environmental blueprint.
So that you, the listener, can start to see how you might reconstruct some of it in your own life, no matter where you live.
Precisely.
And the term itself, blue zone, it has this wonderful, almost accidental origin story. It came literally from fieldwork, didn't it?
It did, yeah. It was coined by a demographer, Michel Poulain, and a physician, Gianni Pes. They were in Sardinia, in Italy, and they were doing this incredibly meticulous work of verifying birth records.
Just going village by village, checking the document.
Exactly. And they were tracking the density of centenarians in this one rugged province, the Nuoro province.
And here's the key part of that puzzle. They were specifically tracking male centenarians.
Right, and that's the statistical anomaly. In the Western world, women typically outlive men by a pretty significant margin. You see, 4 or 5 female centenarians for every one male?
A huge gap.
A huge gap.
Yeah.
But in these isolated Sardinian villages, the ratio was almost 1 to 1.
Wow.
So as they were marking this cluster of villages on their paper map, showing this exceptional male longevity, they just physically encircled the area with a blue marker.
And that blue line on the map.
That blue line became the geographic boundary. And the term blue zone, it just stuck in the academic community.
So from that one spot, that one blue inked circle in Sardinia, the investigation just blew up, right? It was led by Dan Buettner, National Geographic, and the National Institute on Aging.
Yeah, it went global. And that led to the identification of 5 distinct verified zones that all meet this criteria of exceptional longevity and, that compression of morbidity we talked about.
Okay, so let's list them. We have the original spot, of course, the Nuoro province of Sardinia, Italy.
Then there's the Okinawa prefecture in Japan.
The Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica.
The rugged island of Ikaria in Greece.
And then the one that's such a fascinating outlier, Loma Linda, California in the USA.
The control group, really, their longevity is based on a chosen culture, not on geographic isolation.
A remote Greek island and suburban Southern California, both existing in the same framework of exceptional vitality.
Right.
It just immediately tells you that the solutions here are behavioral and environmental. They're not purely genetic or geographic.
That's the whole takeaway. It's a system you can build.
To really get your head around the power of this blue zone ecosystem, I think you have to start with the human story. The case that really became the Rosetta Stone for this whole phenomenon.
The story of Stamatis Moraitis.
Exactly.
Yeah, his story is, it's often cited as just the perfect, compelling anecdote. It shows how the environment can aggressively intervene in our biology. It's a clinical anomaly that medical science still struggles to fully explain.
To set the scene for us, Moraitis was a Greek war veteran, but he was living the standard high-stress American life.
Right, in Florida. Complete with a Western diet, the whole package. This was 1976.
And he starts feeling ill. Extreme fatigue, shortness of breath, the classic signs. He goes to see several specialists, and he gets this just devastating diagnosis.
Terminal lung cancer. The prognosis was 6 to 9 months.
6 to 9 months.
And this is the moment. His choice, right here, which was born not out of some, spiritual ideal, but out of pure, cold pragmatism. This choice set the stage for the blue zone mechanism to take over his life.
He rejected aggressive chemotherapy. But the reason, and this is so important, it was financial.
Absolutely. He just did the math. He calculated the cost of the chemo and the cost of a U.S. funeral, and he realized it would completely ruin his family financially.
So rather than do that to them,
he chose to simply go back to his birthplace, this isolated island of Ikaria in Greece, the island of his ancestors. He just wanted to arrange for a burial there and, as he put it, wait for a good death with some dignity.
So he arrives back on this remote, windswept island, and the environment just starts this unsolicited intervention in his biology. He wasn't looking for a cure.
Not at all. He was looking for a comfortable place to die. But the cure was, in a way, baked into the cultural architecture of Ikaria.
That's the key, isn't it?
It's everything. So the first thing that happened was this immediate downshifting. There are no clocks, no alarms, no pressure. He just woke up naturally when his body wanted to.
Which immediately reduces that morning cortisol spike that defines modern alarm clock life.
Exactly. And his diet, it shifted just by necessity. He started eating the local Ikarian food, fresh vegetables from a garden, wild herbs, that high polyphenol olive oil, and of course, local wine.
And then, crucially, he found a purpose.
Yes. He planted a garden and some vines. He completely assumed he wouldn't live to see them harvested.
Of course not. He had months to live.
But the act of just tending those vines, clearing the weeds, it gave him this constant, low-intensity physical purpose.
It's what researchers call NEAT, right? Non-exercise activity thermogenesis.
Precisely. It's that low-intensity, constant movement that keeps your metabolism working efficiently. And you couple that with a profound reduction in chronic stress.
And that
high antioxidant, anti-inflammatory diet, combined with the low-stress environment and that constant, non-stressful movement, it created a biological environment that was, in simple terms, just extremely hostile to the cancer's progression.
Okay, but I have to ask, how do researchers separate that from just spontaneous remission? Cancers do occasionally just go into remission on their own. Was the environment really the driver, or was it just a lucky fluke?
That's a critical question. And yes, researchers absolutely acknowledge that spontaneous remission is a possibility. You can't rule it out.
Okay.
However, the subsequent 30 years of his life, that provides the strongest circumstantial evidence that the environment was the key factor. It wasn't just a fluke. The environment didn't, cure him overnight.
Right.
But it seemed to have halted the progression, and it allowed his body's own restorative processes to just take over and dominate.
Yeah.
And that environmental change was sustained for decades.
And then there's the kicker, the part of the story that turns it from an anecdote into this, epidemiological parable. What happened 3 decades later?
He lived for another 30 years. He passed away at a claimed age of 102.
Incredible.
And when he eventually went back to the U.S. to follow up with his original medical team,
what did he find?
He discovered that all of the physicians who had diagnosed him with terminal lung cancer were dead.
Wow. That is startling. I mean, it's hard to think of a more powerful, almost poetic testament to the power of environmental health.
It really is.
So the key takeaway here is that longevity, it's not just about winning the genetic lottery. Moraitis was a westernized Greek vet with a standard American lifestyle who got cancer.
Right.
But by putting himself back into this very specific ecosystem, one of high friction, constant natural movement, but also profoundly low stress, his body was essentially forced to become resilient.
It's the system protecting the individual. The environment is actively demanding vitality from its inhabitants. The healthy choice is just the path of least resistance because the whole culture, the whole topography is designed that way.
Okay, let's zoom out now and travel across these 5 zones. This is where we look at these really distinct cultures, from shepherds to Japanese gardeners to Californian city dwellers, and we start to identify those shared pillars.
Let's get into the data.
Yeah.
We need to see how these radically different cultures all arrived at the same biological outcome.
Right. So I'll focus on the unique cultural or geographic element of each zone, and I want you to give us the scientific, the anthropological, why it works behind what we're seeing.
Sounds good. Let's start where it all began.
Sardinia. We already talked about that huge statistical anomaly, that nearly 1-to-1 male to female centenarian ratio in the Nuoro province. Everywhere else in the world, male longevity just lags so far behind. Why are the Sardinian men such powerful outliers?
Well, the first hypothesis, and it's a good one, was genetics. And there's something to it.
Yeah.
You have centuries of isolation. Invaders were constantly pushing the indigenous population up into the steep rocky highlands, and that created a genetic bottleneck.
So a smaller gene pool.
A smaller, more concentrated gene pool. And they preserved this specific genotype, M26, which has been directly linked to exceptional longevity. However, and this is a huge however.
There's always a however.
Always. The research is really clear on this. Even with that genetic advantage, genes only account for maybe 20 to 30% of the outcome.
So the overwhelming factor
Is the 70 to 80% that comes from lifestyle and environment.
So the geography itself then becomes the second and more important factor. It's like an involuntary personal trainer.
That's a perfect way to put it. The Nuoro province is defined by its sheer difficulty. The traditional occupation for these men is shepherding.
Right.
Now think about what that actually means. It means walking 5 miles or more every single day over steep, uneven ground. This is not a flat paved urban walk.
No, this is dynamic.
It's dynamic, it's low intensity, but it constantly requires core stability, balance, and what we call eccentric muscle contraction, especially when you're walking downhill.
So they're not just getting a cardio workout, they're building this functional whole body strength. They're preventing the kind of balance loss that leads to catastrophic falls later in life.
Exactly. It's exercise that is engineered into their ecosystem. It promotes metabolic efficiency and cardiovascular health without the joint impact and, the stress of modern high-intensity workouts. They're getting their exercise passively just by doing their jobs.
Okay, let's dive into their diet, specifically that famous local wine, 𝐏𝐂𝐃𝐂𝐀𝐒. We hear about its high polyphenol content, but what does that mean chemically? What's going on in that glass?
Okay, so 𝐏𝐂𝐃𝐂𝐃 is the local red wine. It's made from the Grenache grape. The soil in Nuoro is really poor, it's dry, it's highly stressed, and they have an intense high-altitude UV index.
So the grapes are struggling to survive.
They're struggling. And when grapes grow under stress, they produce incredibly high levels of these protective compounds to survive. So that means 𝐏𝐂𝐃𝐂𝐃 wine contains 2 to 3 times the level of these artery-scrubbing polyphenols, specifically flavonoids and anthocyanins, compared to other common red wines.
But is that concentration really high enough to overcome the potential negative effects of the alcohol, or is it more about how they drink it?
The context is absolutely paramount. They consume it daily, but moderately 1 to 2 glasses. And critically, it is always with food and always with friends.
The happy hour.
It is a social stress reducer. So you get the combination of the chemical benefit from the polyphenols and the psychological benefit from the social bonding and the downshifting. That's what makes it protective. It's completely unlike solitary heavy drinking.
And their dairy is also totally different from what we consume in the West.
Completely different. Their dairy is pastoral. It's almost exclusively from sheep for Pecorino Sardo and goats. These animals are out grazing on wild, nutrient-dense herbs and forage.
Which changes the milk itself.
It dramatically alters the chemical composition of the dairy. And that translates directly into much higher levels of anti-inflammatory omega-3 fatty acids and this compound called CLA, conjugated linoleic acid.
Okay.
So you have this protective fat profile that is significantly better at reducing chronic inflammation, which we know is a major driver of almost every age-related disease.
And their carbohydrate staple, this pain carousel, this twice-baked flatbread.
That flatbread is traditionally made with sourdough. And that fermentation process is key because it lowers the glycemic load.
So it doesn't spike your blood sugar.
Exactly. Unlike modern refined bread that sends your blood sugar soaring, these fermented carbs are digested slowly. They maintain metabolic stability. It's just another one of these small inherited dietary advantages that adds up over a lifetime.
Finally, what might be the bedrock of Sardinian longevity is their social structure, this concept of the anziani.
This is such a powerful cultural mandate. In the Sardinian Blue Zone, your social status actually increases with age. The elders, the anziani, they aren't sidelined. They're not isolated in homes.
They're revered.
They're revered as the custodians of history, of language, of family values. This constant social integration and respect, it provides purpose. It prevents that death of despair that so often follows forced retirement in our cultures.
You also mentioned the grandmother effect. How does the presence of grandparents in the home actually benefit the grandchildren's health?
It's this beautiful synergistic mechanism, both biological and social. Statistics show that when you have functional, active grandparents in these multi-generational homes, you see lower mortality and disease rates for the grandchildren.
Why is that?
Well, the elderly are providing constant supervision. They're passing on traditional, healthier cooking methods. They're reducing the stress load on the parents. They're ensuring better hygiene. They're just more vigilant.
So the elders get purpose and stimulation.
And the younger generations get better care and this crucial transfer of knowledge. It's a reciprocal arrangement that benefits the entire lifespan of the family unit.
Okay, let's sail east now to Okinawa, the archipelago that historically had the longest disability-free life expectancy on the planet.
Right, despite surviving just severe historical poverty and the devastation of World War II.
And the key to their story seems to be this nutritional pivot that was driven entirely by necessity.
Absolutely. The traditional Okinawan diet is defined by one food above all others, the purple sweet potato, the beni-imo.
So mainland Japan, they relied on rice?
They did.
Yeah.
But the volcanic soil and the frequent typhoons in Okinawa made rice cultivation really challenging, so they had to rely on a different crop.
And its dominance in their diet is just staggering.
It truly is. The research shows that before 1940, a massive 67% of the traditional Okinawan caloric intake came from this one tuber. Rice was only about 12%.
And the beni-imo is a nutritional powerhouse.
It's incredible. It's low glycemic, it's extremely high in fiber, and crucially, it's packed with anthocyanins. Those are the dark purple pigments, the potent antioxidants, the same compounds we value in blueberries and red wine.
So this reliance on the sweet potato, it basically forced a natural state of caloric restriction onto the whole population. It filled them up with high-fiber, low-calorie food.
Exactly, and this directly supported their most famous cultural rule, hara hachibu.
The 2,500-year-old Confucian mantra.
To stop eating when your stomach is 80% full.
But that's so hard to do psychologically, isn't it?
It is if you're eating highly processed, calorie-dense, low-fiber junk food. But when 67% of your calories are coming from a high-fiber, low-glycemic tuber, you physically feel full much faster.
Ah, I see.
The diet naturally supports the philosophy without requiring extreme willpower. And that combination created the vital calorie gap that we know slows aging in mammals and prevents the metabolic syndrome so common in the West.
And we also see a big role for medicinal foods.
Yes, a huge role. Their diet features immense amounts of soy and tofu, up to 8 times higher than the American average. And foods like goya, which is bitter melon. Goya has been shown to contain compounds that lower blood sugar so effectively that the physiological effect is comparable to some anti-diabetic pharmaceuticals. They're consuming preventative medicine with every single meal.
Now, beyond the food, maybe the most powerful psychological invention in Okinawa is the Moai.
The Moai is a social innovation of just profound importance. It's a formalized social support group. It's typically formed with 4 or 5 friends in childhood, and they commit to one another for life.
So this is much deeper than just having a group of friends.
It's an ironclad codified structure.
Yeah.
Traditionally, it started as a financial pooling system to help members, buy land or navigate a crisis. But it evolved into this profound emotional safety net.
So if someone has a problem.
If a member faces financial hardship or suffers the death of a spouse, the Moai steps in immediately. With money, with food, with emotional support. The psychological security of knowing you have that tribe, that you will never be abandoned, is an incredible countermeasure against chronic stress.
And less chronic stress means lower cortisol levels. Lower cortisol means less chronic inflammation. It's social engineering that's fighting inflammation.
That's exactly what it is.
Right.
And finally, you have the Okinawan perspective on purpose, their ikigai. Their culture simply doesn't have a word for retirement in the way we think of it as stopping work.
Ikigai is the reason for which I wake up in the morning.
And it's often granular. It's tied to community function, not economic output. It could be passing on martial arts, teaching a skill, gardening, holding a great-grandchild. This sense of being needed by your community is statistically linked to adding an estimated 7 years to your life expectancy. It's a psychological anchor.
Okay, moving to Central America now. The Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica is fascinating because this is a longevity hot zone inside a developing nation. Much lower health spending than Japan or the U.S.
Right.
Yet the stats are just undeniable. A 60-year-old Nicoyan man has a probability of reaching 100 that is 7 times that of a man in Japan.
7 times. That incredible statistical edge, achieved without high-tech medicine, it points directly to this potent environmental influence, what they call the hydrogeological hypothesis.
The water.
The water supply in Nicoya is a silent supplement.
Most of us think of hard water as a bad thing, Scale in your pipes, chalky taste. Why is Nicoya's hard water a longevity advantage?
It's all about the composition of the dissolved minerals. The aquifers there, they percolate through limestone bedrock. The result is drinking water with the highest calcium and magnesium content in all of Costa Rica.
So the water itself is a passive, population-wide nutritional supplement.
Consumed unconsciously every single day.
Let's break down those two minerals. This is amazing. The Earth is literally medicating the population.
So first, the high concentration of dissolved calcium strengthens bones significantly. This dramatically reduces fatal hip fractures. A fall can be a death sentence for the elderly globally, but the Nicoyans have stronger skeletal architecture right from the tap.
And magnesium.
Magnesium is absolutely essential for regulating blood pressure, for nerve function, for preventing arrhythmias. High magnesium levels are strongly correlated with lower rates of heart disease. They're getting these foundational cardiovascular supplements without even knowing it.
And their diet, it's built on that Mesoamerican agricultural tradition. The three sisters, corn, beans, and squash.
Yes. But the preparation of the corn is the chemical secret. It's a process called nixtamalization.
Okay.
This is a traditional chemical preparation that is absolutely critical to the Nicoyan advantage. They don't just grind the maize, they soak it in a solution of water and an alkaline substance lime, or calcium hydroxide, to remove the husk.
And what does that chemical reaction do for them biologically?
Two vital things. First, it chemically releases niacin, or vitamin B3, which is otherwise locked up and unavailable in corn. Without this process, a diet heavy in corn leads to a deficiency disease called pellagra.
I see. And the second thing?
This is the direct blue zone connection. The process dramatically boosts the grain's absorbable calcium content.
So they're reinforcing the bone health they get from the water through their staple food, the corn tortilla.
And that tortilla, when combined with beans, also forms a complete protein. It's a perfect low-saturated fat nutritional synergy. It's a perfect system.
And like in Okinawa, they have their plan de vida.
A reason to live. It revolves around family and functional physical work. You find centenarians in Nicoya still clearing brush with a machete, tending fields, riding horses well into their 90s. It's not exercise. It's necessary, productive life exercise.
And finally, just the simple fact of living in a dry, sunny climate gives them another passive advantage.
Vitamin D. Their high daily solar exposure, just from their active outdoor lifestyle, ensures they have optimal vitamin D levels all year round. And since vitamin D deficiency is a huge global problem linked to everything from heart disease to osteoporosis, this simple geographical reality is a significant passive longevity advantage.
Okay, back to the agency, to Ikaria, the home of Stamatis Moraitis. If Sardinia is defined by physical friction, Ikaria seems to be defined by the lack of it. It's like the culture operates in a time warp, a total disregard for the clock.
It's the chronological disconnect, and it's such a powerful psychological intervention. The culture operates on what they call Ikarian time. Business meetings happen when people show up. Appointments are fluid. Lunch is often in the late afternoon.
That temporal looseness.
It prevents that constant low-level anxiety that's associated with Western punctuality and, hustle culture. It just drastically lowers the chronic production of cortisol.
And the midday siesta, the habitual nap, is a huge part of this intentional stress reduction.
It's basically mandatory. This isn't laziness. It's a crucial physiological reset. The research confirms this. Regular midday napping, 3 times a week or more, reduces the risk of coronary heart disease mortality by 37%.
37%? Why?
When you nap, you allow your heart rate and your blood pressure to dip dramatically. It gives your cardiovascular system a necessary recovery period. It buffers against the effects of daily stress.
And their daily beverages are also radically different. They rely on the pharmacy of the hill.
They do. They consume vast quantities of mountain tea. These are infusions made from the wild herbs that grow everywhere on the slopes.
Yeah.
Rosemary, sage, dandelion, mint, fennel. This isn't just a tradition, it's a pharmacologically active strategy.
And the effects are medicinal, targeted at longevity.
Yes. Many of these herbs, especially dandelion and fennel, are mild natural diuretics. By increasing kidney function, they help the body excrete excess sodium, which naturally helps manage blood pressure.
Okay.
And then herbs like wild mint and rosemary, they're just packed with anti-inflammatory polyphenols. Sustained consumption acts as a daily microdosing strategy of protective compounds linked to lower rates of dementia and cardiovascular disease.
And their social anchor is the panegyri. This does not sound like a quiet retirement.
Not at all. The panegyri are these traditional, really raucous community festivals honoring patron saints. They're communal feasts, there's local goat meat, copious local wine, and this vigorous dancing in circles, the 𝐏𝐿𝐴, that often goes on until dawn.
And the centenarians are right in the middle of it.
They're active participants. This provides high-intensity social cohesion, which buffers against depression, and it's a sudden, rigorous physical workout. It's a powerful collective catharsis.
Okay, finally, we hit the big statistical outlier, Loma Linda, California. We've gone from remote islands and steep mountains to, urban sprawl in Southern California. Its longevity is entirely a product of a chosen culture.
Right, the community built around the Seventh-day Adventist Church. This zone is the most powerful piece of evidence proving that lifestyle is paramount. It shows that the blue zone advantage can be intentionally created and sustained even in the middle of a stressful, urban American environment.
And the compliance mechanism here isn't geography, it's theology.
Exactly. For Adventists, the body is viewed as the temple of the Holy Spirit. This makes health maintenance not just a personal choice, but a religious mandate. And that theological grounding provides an incredible adherence to a healthy lifestyle that's far stronger than temporary willpower or the latest fad diet.
And that translates directly into their diet and temperance.
Yes. The church encourages a plant-based, often vegetarian diet rooted in biblical texts. And the long-term studies are clear. Adventist men live 7.3 years longer, and Adventist women live 4.4 years longer than their non-Adventist Californian neighbors.
Wow.
And a huge part of that is their high consumption of nuts, especially almonds and walnuts. Studies consistently show that people eating nuts 5 times a week or more cut their risk of heart disease by about half.
And of course, the big two.
The strict avoidance of smoking and alcohol. That alone eliminates 2 of the largest, most destructive vectors of chronic disease on the planet.
The most potent mechanism for stress reduction, especially in the 247 hustle of Southern California, has to be the sanctuary in time, the Sabbath.
It is an engineered interruption of modern stress. The Sabbath, from Friday sunset to Saturday sunset, is a mandatory physiological and psychological reset. Secular work, commerce, digital distraction, it all stops. The entire 24 hours is dedicated to family, nature, and worship.
How does that compare physiologically to something like the Ikaria nap?
The nap is a short-term cardiovascular reset. The Sabbath is a sustained, weekly, neurological de-escalation. By enforcing this 24-hour pause on the stressors of Western culture traffic, deadlines, consumerism, it prevents the chronic accumulation of cortisol that drives systemic inflammation and metabolic dysfunction. It's a genius piece of cultural engineering for surviving modernity.
And finally, a simple, non-theological health rule they prioritize.
Hydration. Simple but profound. Studies within the Adventist community have linked consistently drinking 5 to 6 glasses of water a day to significant reductions in fatal heart attacks. It just optimizes blood viscosity and helps manage blood pressure. It underscores that longevity is built on these tiny, consistent habits.
We've crisscrossed the entire globe, and the details are so wonderfully diverse. Purple sweet potatoes, hard water, shepherding, mandatory napping, and forced rest. But what are the universal threads? What are the common principles that unite a shepherd in Sardinia with an Adventist in California?
That is the ultimate goal of the investigation, right? To distill it down. And that's where the Power 9 comes from. It's the anthropological distillation of the common denominators.
Yeah.
It shows that these successful behaviors are structural pillars shared by all 5 zones, regardless of geography or religion.
Okay, let's run through them and connect them back to what we've learned, starting with movement.
1. Move naturally. This is the Sardinian model applied universally. None of these populations exercise in the modern sense. They're not in a gym lifting weights or running marathons.
Right.
Movement is engineered into the ecosystem. They garden, they knead bread by hand, they walk up steep inclines, they tend to animals. It's constant, low-intensity movement. Science calls it neat non-exercise activity thermogenesis.
And what's the advantage of that neat over, say, a 1-hour intense gym session?
Neat keeps your metabolism high, it keeps your lymphatic fluid moving, keeps your blood sugar stable all day long. A high-intensity workout might burn 500 calories, but if you spend the next 23 hours sedentary, the net benefit is really minimized. Constant low-intensity movement avoids the cortisol spiking intensity of high-impact exercise while ensuring daily physical resilience.
And the second point, which we saw everywhere from Okinawa to Nicoya, is having a clear reason to get up in the morning.
2. Purpose. Ikigai plan de vida. Having a vocabulary for purpose, whether it's the Okinawan Ikigai or the Nicoyan plan de vida, is profoundly protective against age-related decline. This clarity of purpose, not tied to economic output but to community and family, adds approximately 7 years to life expectancy. It does that by reducing cognitive decline and stress hormones.
Next up is the required stress valve, the interruption of the constant noise of modern life.
3. Downshift. Every single one of these blue zone cultures has a mandatory stress recovery mechanism. It's the Ikarian nap, the Adventist Sabbath, the Sardinian happy hour, the Okinawan ancestor veneration. These are non-negotiable rituals that interrupt the physiological stress response and force the body and mind to return to homeostasis every single day or every week.
The fourth point focuses on caloric intake, which is maybe the most challenging lesson for the modern world.
4-80% rule, harahochibu. Caloric restriction is still the most consistently observed factor in slowing aging in mammals. The Okinawan mantra, to eat until you're 80% full, creates that vital calorie gap needed to prevent weight gain and metabolic syndrome. And we see a common pattern supporting this across all the zones. They eat their smallest meal in the late afternoon or early evening.
And what's the benefit of that small early evening meal?
It facilitates a long, natural nocturnal fast. By consuming fewer calories before bed, they allow their digestive system to rest and their metabolic repair processes to dominate overnight. It's a powerful anti-aging strategy that's often overlooked by our modern, grazing and late-night snacking habits.
And the foundation of the diet is not meat or processed sugar.
5. Plant slant. The cornerstone of the Blue Zone diet is the humble legume. Beans. Fava beans, black beans, soy, lentils, garbanzo beans. Meat is treated like a celebratory condiment. It's eaten only about 5 times a month, in small 3 to 4 ounce portions typically from free-range animals. This reliance on high-fiber, low-saturated fat legumes just drastically reduces the risk of heart disease, colon cancer, and metabolic disease.
Then we get to the controversial point that always sparks debate.
Alcohol. And 6. Wine at 5. Except Adventists, yes. With the one notable exception of Loma Linda, moderate alcohol consumption is the norm, 1 to 2 glasses daily. But we have to reiterate the key factors. Consistency and context. It is always consumed with friends and always with food. This moderation utilizes the stress-reducing social component of the drink, and the food mitigates the insulin spike. It's a sharp contrast to the destructive binge culture we see elsewhere.
So if I have a moderate glass of high polyphenol wine with my family and with dinner, I'm engaging in preventative medicine, not just having a happy hour.
If the context is social and it's paired with a plant-forward meal, the data suggests the overall outcome is protective. It's a ritual designed to decompress and connect.
The next 2 points are about the critical structure of their communities.
7. Belong. This refers to participation in a faith-based community. The specific denomination is completely irrelevant. What matters is the structure. Participation adds 4 to 14 years of life expectancy.
Wow.
It provides a built-in, non-negotiable social network, shared rituals for shedding stress, and these structured behavioral expectations of moderation and sobriety.
And the critical role of the family structure.
8. Loved ones first. Centenarians invest profoundly in family. They commit to life partners, which adds about 3 years of life expectancy. And crucially, they keep aging parents and grandparents nearby, which leverages that protective grandmother effect we talked about, where the elders provide stability and purpose to the whole family unit.
Finally, the subtle power of social reinforcement, the Moai effect, but applied universally.
Right, tribe. Social contagion is real, and it is powerful. Research suggests that loneliness is as toxic to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Blue Zone residents are either born into or they deliberately create these social circles, their right tribe, that support healthy behaviors. If your 5 closest friends walk and garden and eat healthy meals, you are far more likely to do the same. Health or illness is contagious.
This evidence is just so compelling. But as good anthropological detectives, we have to introduce a moment of critical scrutiny here. The Blue Zone narrative, especially regarding the centenarian claims, is not without some pretty severe challenges and conflicting viewpoints.
It's essential. You have to maintain a critical perspective, particularly on the raw demographic data. And that means we need to introduce the Newman critique, which was presented by Dr. Saul Newman. It's a provocative counter-theory that suggests many of these reported blue zones might just be artifacts of poor record keeping, and, frankly, pension fraud.
Wow.
Not genuine biological vitality.
That is a massive accusation. How does that argument fundamentally work?
Well, Newman argued that regions claiming extremely high numbers of centenarians often correlate really strongly with low literacy rates, high poverty, and historically poor decentralized birth record keeping. His theory is chillingly pragmatic.
Okay.
Families sometimes fail to report the death of an elderly relative so they can continue to collect their state pension or Social Security checks. And the statistical noise created by these, phantom centenarians artificially inflates the longevity data.
And is there historical evidence that this has actually happened in some of these regions that were initially flagged?
Yes, unfortunately. It forces a healthy dose of skepticism. A significant audit in Japan in 2010, for example, revealed that 230,000 listed centenarians were either missing or demonstrably dead.
230,000?
Yeah. And similar findings regarding pension fraud have surfaced in parts of Greece. This initial statistical noise makes verifying these claims incredibly difficult, especially outside of meticulously recorded Western nations.
But the Blue Zone researchers like Poulain and Buettner, they have a strong rebuttal for the 5 specific zones we've discussed. They're making a distinction between that statistical noise and validated longevity clusters.
They do. They acknowledge the widespread data issues in various regions, but they maintain that the 5 specific zones they identified were validated using painstaking cross-referencing. Poulain, for instance, used civil records, church baptismal records, even military service records in Sardinia to confirm ages.
So they went deeper than just the initial government list.
Much deeper. And more importantly, they shift the focus from an exact age count to the overall health profile of the population.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, regardless of whether every single person claiming to be 105 is actually 99, the lifestyle phenotype, the consistently low rates of chronic disease, that radical compression of morbidity, the high functionality of the elderly population, that is undeniable. It's validated by clinical observation. The population as a whole is structurally healthier. The longevity advantage is real, even if the exact count is sometimes inflated.
Okay, now let's talk about maybe the most compelling evidence against the permanence of these blue zones. The tragedy of modernization, specifically the collapse of the Okinawan zone. This is like a grim control study proving the power of environment.
It is heartbreaking, and it is profoundly instructive. Okinawa, which once had the longest disability-free life expectancy on Earth, has plummeted in the Japanese health rankings. Male longevity there has now dropped to 26th among Japan's 47 prefectures.
26.
And critically, it is the only prefecture where life expectancy has actually decreased recently.
What caused such a rapid decline?
It's the hamburgerization of the diet. The post-war influence, primarily from the U.S. military bases, introduced Western processed food and sugar into a previously nutrient-scarce environment. The island of Immortals now has the highest density of fast food restaurants in Japan.
So the younger Okinawans are swapping the purple sweet potato and tofu.
For canned meat like Spam, sugary beverages, and processed snacks.
And the result is what you'd expect. Rapidly rising obesity, metabolic disease, cardiovascular failure, all within a single generation.
Exactly. This collapse fundamentally proves the primacy of environment and lifestyle over genetics. If Okinawans had some inherent, unshakable immortality gene, this would not be happening. The longevity advantage, which took centuries of cultural practice to build, it evaporates in a single generation when you remove that nutritional and social scaffolding.
And we see the same pattern, though maybe less dramatic, contracting the zones in Central America too.
Right. The Nicoya advantage is also shrinking. Researchers have noted that the strongest longevity benefit is largely confined to the cohort born before 1930. The younger generations who are adopting motorized transport and processed foods, they are not inheriting that same statistical edge. It just confirms that this is a fleeting cultural phenomenon. It's defined by compliance to a system that demands vitality.
So if the original blue zones are fading because of modernization and globalization, the anthropological task really shifts, doesn't it? It goes from mere observation to active reconstruction. We can't just pack up and move to Ikaria anymore.
Right.
We have to ask, can we recreate these conditions, this high-friction, low-stress ecosystem in our modern cities? And that's the whole premise of the Blue Zones project.
And the central principle remains the same. Willpower is the least effective path to behavior change. You can't just willpower yourself into a decade of walking and eating beans. Longevity has to be designed into your infrastructure so that the healthy choice becomes the path of least resistance. It has to be engineered into your environment.
So let's start with urban design, making our cities a form of preventive medicine. How do we mimic the Sardinian hills in a flat suburban landscape?
We look to replicate that move naturally, pillar, through active transportation. This means the deliberate redesign of our streets to prioritize pedestrians and bikes over cars. It means widening sidewalks, creating visible bike lanes, and crucially, establishing a life radius where necessary tasks and appealing destinations are within easy walking distance.
Since most of us spend, 90% of our lives within 5 miles of home, that 5-mile radius has to be engineered so that walking to a park or a fresh produce market is physically easier and more pleasant than driving to a fast food outlet at the end of a suburban cul-de-sac.
You're creating involuntary training. It's about reducing the friction associated with healthy choices. If your only good option is to walk the kids to school, you walk. If the stairs are more appealing and visible than the elevator, you take the stairs. That's how we embed NEAT back into our day.
Now let's move inside. How do we optimize our personal ecosystem, our homes, to become a longevity incubator?
We can apply the downshift and purpose principles directly by architecting our living spaces. For downshift, we can establish what I call a flow room, a dedicated quiet space, ideally free of digital screens, that's entirely dedicated to hobbies, reading, or quiet conversation.
So this mimics the psychological benefits of the Icarian nap or the Adventist Sabbath, but on a daily basis.
Exactly. It facilitates a state of flow, that deep engagement in an activity that isn't stressful or digitally distracting. And that's been shown to lower heart rate and cortisol levels dramatically. It's an engineered space for neurological recovery.
And the kitchen architecture is crucial for enforcing that 80% rule without constant conscious effort.
This is all about combating the seafood trap. We are visually driven creatures. We eat what we see most easily. So we have to apply blue zone principles by keeping less healthy foods. Chips, cookies, processed snacks out of sight. Store them in opaque containers or high up on difficult shelves.
And the healthy food?
Conversely, fresh fruits, vegetables, nuts, they should be washed, prepared, and placed right at eye level, easily accessible on the counter.
And the small change that leverages the psychology of satiety is plate size.
Yes. Using smaller 10-inch plates down from the modern 12-inch standard unconsciously enforces the 80% rule. A smaller portion of food looks visually satisfying on a smaller surface. It leads you to take less and feel satiated sooner. It reduces caloric intake naturally, without willpower.
And finally, let's close with the low furniture heuristic, based on the Okinawan tradition of sitting on the floor.
That simple physical change, moving away from deep, plush, easy to sink into Western furniture to sitting on a low bench or a cushion or the floor, it forces you to constantly engage your core, your hip flexors, and your lower body strength just to get up and down dozens of times a day.
It's that constant necessary movement again.
It's passive friction that builds resilience. This constant micro-movement preserves mobility and balance, directly fighting the loss of functional strength that often precedes catastrophic falls in old age. It requires resilience and builds it at the same time.
This deep dive really reveals something fundamental, doesn't it? Forgetting to die, it's not a passive act of genetic luck. It's not a pharmaceutical intervention.
Not at all.
It is the complex result of constructing a high-friction environment, one that demands constant movement and social engagement, but doing it inside a low-stress ecosystem where healthy behaviors are just the path of least resistance.
And the overarching lesson is this stark paradox. The original blue zones were often places defined by historical scarcity and hardship. They walked out of necessity. They practiced caloric restriction because food was limited. They relied on deep interdependence because of isolation. Modern, wealthy society, defined by abundance and convenience, is now struggling to reverse engineer the benefits of that scarcity.
The story of Stamatis Moraitis reminds us that the human body has this profound capacity for repair if we just place it back in an environment that demands vitality and removes chronic stress.
But the rapid decline of Okinawa is the immediate, visceral warning sign. The blue ink on that map fades when the Moai is replaced by the smartphone, when ancestral purpose is replaced by passive entertainment, and when the purple sweet potato is replaced by the golden arches. That cultural scaffolding is fragile.
So the future of longevity isn't about finding a sixth blue zone hidden in some remote corner of the world. It's about the deliberate reconstruction of our own lives and our own communities, using the Power 9 as our architectural blueprint. We have to consciously engineer natural movement into our daily routine, reconstruct shattered social bonds through intentional commitment, and reclaim that sanctuary in time that protects us from modern corrosion.
If you take away one thought today, let it be this. The secret of the blue zones is not that they forget to die. It is that they structure their lives in such a way that they never, for a single moment, forget to live.